Have you ever wondered how your childhood shapes the paths you choose as an adult? Well, on this episode, I am talking with a former diplomat turned expat life coach who spent years adapting, striving, adjusting, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Raised in chaos and passed through foster homes, she became a master at fitting in. But the real breakthrough didn't come from international success. It came when she stopped trying to outrun her emotions and finally allowed herself to feel them. Now, as a life coach, she helps high achievers stop hiding behind their hustle and start living with purpose. If you have ever felt like you are holding it all together, but quietly falling apart on the inside, this one's for you. Stay with me. Welcome to Shift or Get Off the Pot, the podcast that helps you get out of your head and into action so you can make your dreams your reality. Let's get to it. Welcome to this episode. Today's guest is quite familiar with navigating complex worlds, both outwardly and inwardly. She is a former diplomat who has built a life of curiosity, adventure, adaptability, and courage. Because you see, beyond all that jet setting and international travel and career success, she has a much deeper story. She grew up in an unstable household, and she was in and out of foster care during her youth, which, as you can imagine, gave her some of the skills that could serve her as a diplomat, but it also created this desire for a more stable and well-balanced life. And so on today's episode, she is going to share how she made a shift from diplomacy to life coaching, and now how she works with expats, helping them to create a well-rounded, balanced life from the inside out. Welcome to the show, Amanda Molenaar.
Hi, Kim. Thanks so much for inviting me on the show. And what a perfect intro. I couldn't have done it better.
I'm so glad to have you here because I honestly applaud you for taking what must have been a difficult childhood, obviously a little bit challenging, and instead of wallowing in self-pity or getting into victim mindset, taking some of those skills and saying, okay, what can I do with this? And then building some career success out of that. So I would love to hear what led you into becoming a diplomat.
Yeah. Well, actually, at that time, I wasn't so aware of how my childhood gave me all these qualities and what I was needing and what I was wanting. I think I was driven by it in a more subconscious way of like, I need to do well. I need to make sure that I, deliver, that I achieve things. I was so unaware of it, really. But from a young age, I've been traveling. I was lucky to have my dad with all his flaws, but he was also a travel enthusiast. So from a young age, I've been traveling the world, which wasn't that common at the time. And when I was 18, I went abroad for the first time on my own. And I did that almost every year. I spent a year and a half in Latin America, did an internship in Argentina for 6 months, lived in London for 2.5 years. And by that time, I was clear already, like, okay, I think my heart belongs in the global world. I love working in the international scene. And I had my eye on the diplomacy career, but I wasn't sure if I was able to make that happen because it's a very exclusive thing. And to get in, it's a hard process. And my psychologist at the time, I had 2 in total, I think. I was working on something related to my dad with him, and I mentioned I wanted to apply for an internship at the embassy in Argentina. And he said, I think you would be an amazing diplomat. because you, having lived in a with foster families and growing up in an alcoholic family, you have learned to read the room and to adjust yourself all the time. And that's basically what you do as a diplomat as well, because you have to settle in different cultures and you have to read them and work with them. And that was the moment that I really felt that shift inside of me, that I thought, okay, hey, maybe I do have some qualities that I can use, things that I got from my childhood that are actually really useful things to use in my career as well. And that was the first time that I started to see it that way. But until that time, I was really just unaware of it. It drove me to achieve great things, but not in this intentional way, I would say.
I think that's so fascinating because, yes, first of all, traveling and being able to live in different countries and understand their culture and really get yourself immersed in that as well. Number one, who wouldn't want to do that? I mean, I think that's just part of enjoying life and living life to the fullest and experience all of that. But also that you say it became intentional for you. You approached it a different way and not being aware of it. So is it that you weren't quite aware of all the things that you had gone through in your childhood and thought, oh, okay, wow, I've learned how to adapt or I've learned how to read the room. It was that you just weren't aware of that and it took somebody else to point that out to you?
Yeah, in a way, yeah, absolutely. I was aware that I was very self-reliant and that I was responsible for my own happiness and that I didn't really need to, ask for support all the time. I knew how to carry myself in that way. Um, I also knew I was very independent abroad. So like I knew that was a thing I learned in my childhood, obviously. But I was really insecure from the inside. I may looked confident, but I wasn't that confident on the inside. And I was always thinking like I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop, and um, something might happen, and I might not succeed. And I really had this imposter syndrome, and it took that psychologist for me to see actually. On the other side of my insecurity, everything that I've been through are beautiful qualities as well. So yeah, it took someone on the outside to point it out for me, because until that time I was aware of everything I've been going through and I knew how it impacted me. I just hadn't been translating that to qualities.
Mm. Yeah, I can understand that. And waiting for the other shoe to drop, you mentioned, that is something I have heard many times from people who have grown up in a very unstable or very highly volatile or an alcoholic household, because it's like you don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know what kind of response you're going to get from
Mm-hmm.
somebody. But also, I would imagine that had to be even heightened because you were sent to live in foster care system, right?
Yes. I was 15 when I moved out of my house, in a way. So I grew up with first my alcoholic mom, who was an alcoholic from, I guess, when I was 4 or 5. I'm not quite sure because I don't have so many memories left of my early childhood. And my parents got divorced when I was 11. And me and my sister stayed with my dad until he also started to drink a lot more. And at one day, my aunt and uncle went to visit unexpectedly, and they saw what was happening, and they basically took me in. So I was 15 when I moved out of my house and into my aunt and uncle's family. And then after that, I also lived with another family who I knew at the time, more or less. So I was a teenager already. And so, when you're from 0 to 7, you absorb everything around you and it really shapes you into the human you are later on. I already had my sense of myself, but I was still a child. I was a teenager. And so, in hindsight now, it's only something that I started to realize the last 2 years or so. I was also, I was really good at adjusting because those two families were completely different. And also compared to my own family, and even with my father and my mother, there were different norms, there were different energies. So I had to adjust all the time. And those two foster families were very stable. So it wasn't that volatile there. But I really learned again to read the room so well and to adjust all the time and to really see what is being expected from me here. And something that I realized very recently only is that I'm really battling sometimes with this limiting belief that I have inside of me of I'm not allowed to belong here. And every time that I'm in a love relationship and it's ended by the other person, this belief gets triggered that I'm not allowed to belong there with them. And it's something I'm realizing, hey, I think this is coming back from my years in foster care.
Oh, I would imagine 100% because you're being moved from one place to another. And so it's, you never really know, like going back to even what you said earlier about kind of, waiting for the other shoe to drop, the trust alone has to be off the charts for you. The inability to know, okay, how long is this going to last?
Yeah.
And is something going to happen here? Or internalizing it and thinking, what did I do to muck this up? Like, where is my
Yeah.
responsibility?
In a way, with the foster families, I knew they were stable, and I knew, rationally, I had nothing there. The other shoe wouldn't necessarily drop there right away. But growing up, and this is the part that I can remember when I was 10, 11, 12, and we were just with my dad, he was a very, what's the word, unexpected drinker in a way. With my mom, I could tell, she was just more of a steady drinker daily. With my dad, I never knew. So I would go to bed and I would have to read his mood before going to bed to see, hey, is he going to drink tonight or not? When I wake up in the morning, will he be making me breakfast, or will he be, passed out on the floor on the stairs? And so I think the volatility and the not being able to really trust what's going to happen and being on high alert all the time comes from that period, really, because even now as an adult, I struggle with sleep. My sleep is so light because I hear every little sound. And I am 100% sure it's linked to how I grew up in my childhood with a dad who, was listening to loud music at night. And I would just have to be aware of like, hey, is he drinking or not? How am I going to wake up tomorrow morning?
Oh my gosh, you're bringing back flashes of memories for me because I can completely relate to that. I am very much a light sleeper, and I've always thought, oh, it's just because of being a mom and I have 4 kids and going through all of that. And even though they're older now, but it wasn't so much that I was always a light sleeper. And I know why. I grew up in an alcoholic household and my brother was a raging alcoholic. And so knowing, oh, what's happening? What's going on? What's that noise in the other room? That's interesting because I would never have linked those things before. So that's very interesting. Also, you mentioned something too, though, that you don't have memories of your early childhood. Why do you think that is?
Because they were too much for a child to take in. It's that simple. Yeah. There was violence in my house, in my home. My mom, wasn't there emotionally, physically sometimes. I think what I saw as a young child was too much to take in. I couldn't understand it probably. So I have a few memories which are not very positive. A few of them are actually, but the ones I do remember are more difficult. And I think it was simply too much for me as a young child because I couldn't fully understand it. And so, I don't remember a lot from my childhood.
So your mom has since passed, correct?
Correct. And my father as well.
Okay. So what has, you had a relationship more so with your father, right? But not
Yeah.
so much with your mom?
Yeah, correct. So my mom was, my mom for the first, gosh, I don't even know, a couple of years of my life for sure. Then she started drinking and then she moved out of the house. And because she was an alcoholic, my dad made sure we only saw her once a week for 2 hours at my grandma's place. So her mom, a safe environment with my aunts and uncles. In that space, once a week for 2 hours, we couldn't really connect as a mother and daughter. And also she stopped going every week because she was ill or she was tired, and I knew she was drinking. And so I did see her and she did call me every week, but we never bonded as a mom and daughter, I would say. And it's a very weird concept to know, okay, she's biologically my mom, and it's not like I'm adopted, so I do see her as my mom, but she's not a mom figure in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And my aunt and my other foster mom were that more for me. And there were also a few years that I rarely spoke to her. When I lived in Brazil as a diplomat, for example, we just didn't have any contact anymore. And 3 weeks after I moved back home from Brazil, my dad passed away, which was a big loss because I did have a good relationship with him at the time. And it was a year after that I thought I need to ask my mom things about my childhood because I don't remember it. My dad has passed, and so she's the last one. And so I reached out to her again, and we had more contact, and she came to visit me in The Hague, where I was living. And so that was nice, but it was still far from a normal relationship, very far. And 2 years after my dad passed away, I was in Barcelona and I got a phone call from her husband, which I never get. So I knew something was wrong. And he told me that she had passed away. And, I was at the airport and getting hugs from strangers because I was just crying. And it was so weird. And what I didn't know at the time, I found out like an hour later, was that she had decided to donate her body to science and that they would pick up the body in an hour or two after I heard the news. But I wouldn't make it at home on time because I still had to fly from Barcelona to Amsterdam. And so I never got to say goodbye to her. She also didn't want to have a funeral. Her circle was very small anyway. So it was so complex to grieve your mom, who has never been your mom, who's never been present, also without like a formal ritual to say goodbye to her. And so that has been very hard. Just like with my dad, it's been hard, but in a different way, because now I'm grieving something I never even had. And that makes it very complex.
Well, and you weren't able to have any kind of closure because, as you said, there was no ritual at all, nothing to give you that closure. But also, I remember a doctor telling me this one time when I was traveling, and my third child at the time, I think, was 11 months. And I was like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to get on this plane. And it was so hard. And I had a good relationship with them. But he said there is a chemical bond no matter what, even if children are adopted, there is still a chemical bond between a biological mother and their child. And it is chemical. And so there is something that even though you didn't have that relationship, and I do believe a lot of times people become like friends or other parents or adults or parents of our friends, can oftentimes fill a need that maybe our parents can't. And they're, in a sense, they become like our surrogate parents. But there is still that chemical bond. And so I would imagine that for you, okay, you had a rough relationship with her, but there is still a bond there. And it's got to be hard to try and go through that grieving process. Do you have what she wrote down? So you had some memories?
Yeah, so she gave me that notebook, and that was nice. A few things came back to me that I had forgotten about, actually. But she stopped writing. I'm not quite sure what my age was, but everything she wrote down was pretty nice. And I was like, this is not how my childhood went. Not what I saw happening. And so I asked her, like, hey, why did you stop writing? Why didn't you share the other things that I also know about? And she was like, oh, because I don't want to let your father down. I'm like, Mom, you've divorced 20 years ago or longer. He's died. Like, you don't need to let him down. But she just couldn't write about that part when things started to go real downhill, which I found very surprising. So I still don't have the memories of like the harder parts. I know that she wrote when she was in rehab, and my sister has those letters or notes. So that is still something on my list that I want to read when I feel ready for it, because I think there is some stuff there that maybe, might be upsetting for me too.
Yeah. Do you and your sister have similar memories about your experience growing up, or are there differences? Or do you feel like you're both very much alike? Really?
Yeah, there are differences. I don't want to speak for her or about her on the podcast because she's a very private person, but she was 2 years younger, so she experienced it differently. We each remember things that, the other person had forgotten. And also she didn't have the teenage years that I had. She actually had it harder. And so her view on it is also different in that way. But overall, I'd say most of it is, we share the same memories, but there are definitely differences as well.
I would imagine that growing up like that caused you to become, well, you even mentioned this, very self-reliant. And try and create this sense of control in your environment. Have you found that to be the case in not just in your personal life, but also in your professional life as well?
I am very self-reliant, yes. And the need of control, I definitely had it in my personal life. Also, my romantic relationships way more. I'm much more relaxed now. I think it's hard to control your professional life if you live abroad and if you are a diplomat. Because especially if you are a diplomat by nature, like you cannot control the job. It is often not always decided for you, or there are elements being decided for you. And if you live abroad, there's this whole other culture that you cannot really grasp fully. And so you can never fully control it. In my professional life, I'm not a perfectionist. I never had this crazy ambition that I want to become an ambassador or I want to be the best in my job. I'm a bit lazy in that regard as well. But what I didn't realize until I started doing some inner work was that actually my standards were really high. So the bar that I set for myself was really high. So maybe it didn't feel like perfection to me, but I know it was much higher than the average person's standards or bars. Mm-hmm. And so I was already achieving quite a lot, not to be the best, but simply to avoid being not enough. That was my biggest fear and still is to this day. And I grew up with a dad who made it very clear when I wasn't smart enough or wasn't good enough. And so I'm always like, as long as I meet the bar of like, okay, it's good enough, then I'm fine. I don't need to aim for the 10 out of 10. If I'm 7 out of 10, then I'm safe. So I was doing that in my professional career for sure, where, I wasn't that crazy ambitious woman, but I did make sure that what I delivered was it was good. And it didn't get to, it couldn't be criticized or anything.
That's actually very healthy, because most people would turn that around and say, okay, look, I have to prove my value and my self-worth, which yes, you are doing, but at the same time, it's not to the extreme where you're pushing so hard to try and achieve something that's almost unattainable. In other words, you're already enough, but at least it's kind of going, okay, instead of a 10 out of a 10, I'm okay with 7 because, and I think something that's really important, you said, because then I'm safe.
Yeah.
And that's key.
And actually what I'm realizing also in the last couple of years is if I would go for that 10, I still wouldn't be safe because then I get to be seen. And so I always made sure that I stayed in like a safe margin where I, blended in with the group or with the rest. And so on either side, I wasn't standing out. And last week I had a TV interview on national TV, and that fear popped up again around being seen because it didn't feel safe. Because then even if it's something positive and it's exciting and makes me, it's really good for my business, I still felt this fear of like, now I'm like removing myself from the group and I get to be seen. And it doesn't matter if it's a good thing or a bad thing, I get to be seen, and that's dangerous. And that is 100% something from my childhood, where I definitely felt that growing up. Where even walking on on my bedroom floor, which was an old house, so you heard everything. My dad would get so angry if I would do that at night when I should be sleeping. And he had these outbursts. And so to be seen, wasn't safe for me in a way. I was walking on eggshells.
Yeah, I can imagine that you're just equating that. What you're doing is equating that with something that happened in your childhood. So it is a little bit more difficult. You brought up imposter syndrome earlier too. And all of that is all wrapped in together, because it's funny how we realize and we're told, okay, look at, in order to get your business out there and get seen, you have to be visible, you have to promote, you have to market, but yet so many people hold themselves back and they don't understand why. And you're bringing up right now very clearly what really is going on internally and how all of these things in your childhood can impact what you're doing, how you're showing up, or what you're creating for yourself in your own life now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I had to overcome this too. Like, I'm visible online now. It's no problem for me, but I'm still noticing I'm holding myself slightly back because, just to stay in the safe margin.
Yeah. But you're noticing it. That's important right there, because now you can take a look at it almost like an objective observer and say, oh, okay, so this is why I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And I think it takes that. I think it takes us stepping back and being able to look at it with fresh eyes, or through, like you said earlier, you had a psychologist that kind of helped you say, okay, look, these are your skill sets and you can use this to become a diplomat and you'd be great at it. But we can't always see that for ourselves.
No. Yeah. Yeah. So I worked with two psychologists, but also quite a few coaches, and especially the coaching got me much farther, where we aren't just talking about things, but really feeling things and embodying a new approach, which was really helpful for me. And like you said, sometimes you just want to look at it as an observer, so that you aren't the fear, but you can see it's part of me or you. So last week when I had the TV interview, I felt that fear coming up, like, oh, I get to be seen, and that's dangerous. And so instead of hesitating whether I should do it or not, I thought, okay, the fear is part of me and I just need to make space for it. I don't need to push it away. I don't need to distract myself from it. I don't need to override it with rational thoughts why this is a good idea to do the interview. No, I just need to accept that the fear is here, that it's coming from this really young Amanda who's afraid, probably of her dad, around being seen, and who is afraid punishment might happen or something. And that's it. And that is just the old girl inside of me who just needs to be, the young girl, sorry, who needs to be comforted and be told that everything is fine and that she is safe. And the moment I did that, I really felt so much more calm inside my body. And I was a bit more rational. I told myself, all I have to do is to show up as my full authentic self, because that is enough. And I don't need to convince anyone. I don't need to prove anything. As long as I'm being me, I can make connection with people. And that's precisely what I want to do with this interview. And so when I went to the interview, I was so calm. And for an entire hour, I shared so authentically, exactly like I had wished for. But had I not seen the fear, had I tried to distract myself from it, had I tried to push it away, I wouldn't be so calm during that interview. Because now I really got to see it just for what it is. It's just a fear and it belongs to me. It will probably stay with me for the rest of my life. But if I just make space for it and can really accept it and look at it with compassion, I can support myself in it.
Such an important point, because you're right. What the mind typically will do will try and rationalize it and try and find ways to either avoid, push it aside and say, you're being ridiculous. Don't worry about it. You know how to do this, blah, 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 blah. And then we start coming from a logical mind and do. And I can go through this and do it, rather than making that space for it. In last week's episode, I had someone on that is very adept at mindfulness, social psychologist, and talked all about being present and mindfulness and such. So what you're bringing up is really exactly what she talked about, in that you just stop, in a sense, and allow yourself to feel that, and then say, okay, because what you're doing is you're really diffusing that energy around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you are, trying to override it with rational thoughts from the logical mind, my God, it's exhausting because you're fighting yourself all the time. Whereas you can just accept it and make space for it. Feelings just want to be felt. And the moment you can make space for it, it can dissolve. Maybe not completely. Maybe it will still be there a little bit in the background, but it will stop nagging you that much. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So making space for it, I think, is key for everything.
Well, that is also precisely why so many people do feel exhausted, because, and I can say that only from doing so many interviews and talking with people about burnout, about anxiety, about panic attacks, all of that stuff, is primarily because they're not allowing themselves to feel the feelings and just say, okay, this is what I'm feeling. Maybe this is why I'm feeling it. And it's okay. It doesn't have any power over me. But being present to that, rather than trying to run from it, because that's what we normally try and do. Avoid, run. I mean, you grew up in an alcoholic household. What are they doing? Avoid. Let me just drown it in this. And I don't want to feel the pain.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I see that happening all the time also in my coaching practice, where especially the clients that I tend to attract, they're high achievers, they're smart, they got a lot of things done, and they have a lot of good things working for them. But they're not used to making space for their emotions because they approach so much through their logical brain. And they're sometimes afraid of their emotions. They tell me like, oh, but if I allow this sadness in, I'm afraid I'll never get out of it. I will cry for days. Or the fear is just paralyzing them. And so they prefer to just stay strong and distract themselves and keep pushing from willpower rather than just from softness and kindness. And in our sessions, we actually explore those emotions, and then they start to feel, okay, it's actually not as bad as I thought. And I feel so much lighter now that I made space for it and really felt them rather than just keep pushing through it. It's such a relief when you can feel your emotions.
Well, there's that saying that fear is false evidence appearing real. And I actually disagree with that, because I think what you're bringing up right here is that you have to feel those emotions, because in that moment, that fear is very real. It's not false evidence. It is real as real can be to you in that moment. And it's being willing to say, oh, I've got to feel this. And I also think too, though, that a lot of people that grow up in an unstable environment, like an alcoholic home, you don't learn how to feel your feelings. Why? Because again, you push them aside and you drown them in something else, in alcohol, drugs, whatever it may be. Even if it's, exercise, whatever it is, something that you're doing to the extreme so that you don't have to feel those feelings. And that's, I think, how a lot of people grow up, because I think that's just kind of what we were taught in society. Like, look, you don't have to, don't do it. Just put your head down mode, go, get it done. And then kind of force your way through things. Right.
Absolutely. And I think my way was to just travel from country to country. So, no drug abuse or alcohol abuse or whatever. No, mine is travel, or was travel, I have to say. And I never learned really to make space for my emotions, because growing up, there was so much going on around me that was too much to take in. So I always disassociated by daydreaming or by, logical thinking. And I did that for my entire life until I was like 30 something. And every time that I would get this longer sense of like mild depression or burnout or just unhappiness or boredom, I would find my solution in, I just need to move to another country or book a ticket, because this place isn't working for me because it's making me feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I moved back from Brazil. 3 weeks later, my dad died. 2 weeks after that, I started my very, very intensive coaching training. It was during a pandemic. I was in a new home. I started a new posting at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I got my heart broken. So much was going on around me that it was too much to take in. And this time I couldn't leave because of the pandemic. The borders were basically closed. And so I was forced to sit with my emotions for the very first time in my life. I was forced to sit with them. And I cried so many nights in my hot bath, because there was nothing else to do. We had an evening curfew in the Netherlands and I was alone all the time. And in my coaching training, I also learned to make space for my emotions. That was the first time, because with my psychologist, I was just talking about what happened to me and I rationally understood everything, but it didn't solve those more, feelings that I had inside my body. And so in that period, I was really forced to sit with my emotions from everything that was going on at the time. But it also really helped me to go back to my childhood and make space for everything that I still needed to feel from that time. So when my mom left, I don't have any memories of it, but my fear of abandonment is there for a reason. Mm-hmm. And in those relationships, it got triggered so badly that I didn't know what to do with it. And this was the first time that I learned to feel the fear. Okay, I got abandoned and my world was, coming down with it, actually. It felt like, pure panic. And this is when I made the shift and I had my own transformation. And the funny thing is, I had already signed up for this coaching training. I knew I was going to quit my job as a diplomat. But without this phase in my life, I would never be the coach that I am today. And I'm someone who is able to make space for my emotions, but also to hold space for others now. And if I hadn't had that episode where everything was coming together, I call it my perfect storm, I never would have been forced to sit with all of it and to make that much space for my emotions. So, travel used to be my distraction to not feel it. And I learned it's actually much better to sit with it, to make space for it. And now I still travel and I still move abroad, but it comes from a genuine place, not from a place of like, oh, I don't want to feel this, but really like, hey, this would be good for me because I am holding space for myself and making space for my emotions. And I still want to move abroad. It's very, very different now.
Not running from something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you feel like you have now understood and been able to put behind you that fear of abandonment?
No, it's still here. I'm afraid it will never fully go away, but I can share with you my own little journey of it, because for a long time, I wasn't even aware that I had it. And so when I would be triggered without being aware of it, I would try to control the other person. I would sense something is wrong. The other person is leaving. I need to fix it. I need him to stay. I need to make sure things work well. So I was trying to control the situation. And later on, I became aware that I had it, but I still didn't know what to do with it. During my coaching training, the first one, I got a better understanding of what was going on inside of me, but it was still through my more logical brain that I told myself, oh, I have nothing to worry about. I'm safe now. This is something from the past. But it still triggered that panic inside of me. So I could calm myself down a little bit with my rational thoughts, but my stomach was still upset. I still felt the panic in my throat. So it wasn't fully working. And it took me a long time of making space for all these emotions from the past that now and I did also a lot of inner child work, which helped. Now when I get triggered, because I still get triggered, I still sense when someone is energetically leaving. I feel it right away in my body again. But now instead of it consuming me and making me do things out of triggers, I feel like, oh, that's that panic. Oh, that's my stomach. I know what's going on. It's the 5-year-old in me who is left alone and who's in pure panic. And so I comfort her, I soothe her, and I can really help myself in that. So I feel much more calm now. Sometimes, often, the other person, the guy that I'm dating, doesn't even notice what's going on inside of me because I'm already at that level where I'm like, okay, I'm cool. Does it mean it's gone? No. I still get triggered and I still feel it, but it's so different from how it used to be.
Well, because you're aware of it and you're catching it in the moment, right? You're just able to say, okay, wait, this is going back to something that happened 5 years ago. But when you say that you hold space for yourself and you calm yourself, what is that process like? What do you talk to, like, okay, that was when you were 5, that's not now. Like, how do you work yourself through that?
Yeah. So sometimes it's just about feeling the feeling. So sometimes I feel panic coming up and I used to distract myself, like, no, not now. Or, what am I even worried about? And I'm really like, okay, just let it all out, feel the feelings. And sometimes it may look like me really with an ugly cry, with pure panic. Sometimes, often actually what I did now is a little bit less because I'm more okay. But I would do an inner child visualization. So I would see my younger self in my old bedroom, feeling so alone and crying. And I would go to her as the adult I am today to really comfort her and to let her know, hey, you're not alone. You're safe. I've got your back. I will always be with you. That kind of work. I've also done a lot of breath work, which has really, really helped me to make contact with my feelings. So sometimes I still do that if the trigger is really big. So it's more like embodiment and visualization processes that I do rather than just telling myself where it's coming from, but really so that I can feel safe in my body and feel, not like I'm being abandoned. And this is also something relatively new. I reach out to people. So whereas before I would do everything on my own, super self-reliant as always, now I reach out to other people and I say, hey, I'm feeling this. And I just want to share that with you. I don't want a solution, but I'm feeling really abandoned. I really am afraid this person is leaving me. And I just want to share that with you and just feel supported. So that has been helpful too. And I also shared with the guy. So I'm just saying, look, this is what's going on with me. And I just want to bring that in so I can be my full authentic self and not have to wear a mask, with you and pretend nothing is going on.
Yeah. And I don't need you to solve it. So,
yeah.
Because that's normally the first thing. Okay, let me fix that for you. It's like, no, let me. So when you brought up a point where you said, I hold space for myself and such, but then you brought up something that we do hear quite a bit, especially in the coaching world. And that is, I'm able to hold space for others. What do you mean by holding space for others?
Well, in my coaching sessions, it looks like I welcome their full self. So they are so used to wearing that mask of the high achiever and got it all figured out, and I don't need anyone's help really. And I want to provide a space where they can really share, okay, but I'm afraid, or this is something so I'm so embarrassed to admit, but I want to be honest with you. So to really hold that space of their full authentic self and not the version of themselves that they show to the outside world, is probably the version of themselves that they don't even know themselves yet. And it's in that space that they get to see like, oh, actually, there's a lot of fear here. Or I didn't know I was feeling all of that, or that I was still carrying that with me, or that I have a certain need. And so in those sessions, they can really feel, okay, I can land here, I can be myself here, and let's just unpack all the luggage that I've been carrying along with me, because my expat clients travel a lot too, from country to country. And so I also make space for emotions in that, where tears come up, they're so used to like continuing their story or overriding it with something more logical. I'm like, no, let's make space for that. Let's go to the body. Let's do an exercise and let's explore that further.
What do you think is probably the biggest challenge for most of your clients? Because you work with expats, and because that's who you were, right?
Yes.
In that world of diplomacy, traveling all the time. And so now you're working with people that are leading a similar life, traveling a lot, living abroad. What do you think their biggest challenge is?
I think it is really to make space for their emotions and to live life from their authentic selves. So I think many of my clients are used to the running as well. Probably not because they had such a dramatic childhood. Usually it's something smaller that they don't themselves even see as something relevant. But they have this mask on of like self-reliant, high achieving professionals, and they want to succeed in their career, and they don't like to ask for support. They figure out things on their own. And to really make space for their softer side in a way, with all these emotions, their inner world, their emotional side, I think that is the biggest challenge for them and their biggest growth opportunity. Because the moment they can do that, they can really show up as their authentic selves in an environment that demands of them to adjust. Because when you live abroad, you need to adjust. And so it's easier to put that mask on and just try to blend in. But the more you can be your authentic self, I think the more, or the happier your life gets to be as well, and steadier as well, no matter where you go. So I think that is the biggest challenge and growth opportunity.
I mean, I know that your niche is expats and working with these people that live abroad, but honestly, what you're talking about applies to so many people.
Yes, I agree.
It truly does, because so many of us don't feel our emotions, don't allow ourselves to feel those emotions, and do walk around with a mask on, or just like, okay, I'm going to muscle my way through this. I'm going to use willpower, and I'm just going to keep, head down mode and go, go, go. When the truth is, working in a much more aligned way simplifies everything.
Yes.
And it becomes easier.
Yes.
Everything becomes easier.
It does. You don't have to fight yourself all the time or have to push so hard. You can just let things be. The life is like a river, and you just get to flow with it. And sometimes you come across an obstacle, but as you give up your resistance to it, it becomes much easier to navigate that river. I think you're right. It applies to so many people, and we all have different masks. And I think there's the one of like achievements and working hard and pushing through. There are other masks like, let me carry your pain. There are a lot of people pleasers and people who want to carry people's pain to avoid feeling their own. There are people who prefer to stay all the time in their logical mind. So there are so many masks that we get to wear. And I think the one of like, let me just succeed, let me achieve, let me work hard is one of them. And those are the people, that I work with together in this global life.
It's almost like it's a badge, like a badge of honor. It's like, oh, look what I've done. I've pushed it. I've done this, and I can do it all by myself. I'm self-reliant. It's like, because I wore that for quite a while.
Yeah.
And then it was like, this isn't, and then people pleasing too, wrapped a few of them in there. And at some point you just wake up and you go, this is exhausting. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I think most of us aren't really aware that we wear it as a badge, We just think it's normal. We're also surrounded by people who find it normal very often, especially if you go to these high pressure environments. A lot of people are like that. So it's normal to achieve so much, to work so hard, to push through. So it's harder to see that sometimes.
Yeah. But on the other side of that, when you finally step back and say, That's exhausting. I don't need to keep doing that. I can change this now. And as you said, a lot of it starts with just being aware and then being present to some of those feelings, what those emotions are, and what the triggers are as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was reading a few text messages from a few years ago in preparation for that TV interview because it was related to something from the past. And I saw my text messages and I saw that I was working until 11:30 at night, night after night, because there was some crisis going on. And I saw that I had written to everyone, I'm so tired. I don't have time. I need to continue working, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, wow, I thought at the time I was already much more aware because I had done my coaching training. It's only now that I see what a huge difference I made in my life. Because now, of course, I'm still tired because I sleep very light, but I'm not pushing myself that much anymore. I'm so much easier on myself. And when I feel something coming up, I make space for it and I make time for it and I cancel my plans. And sometimes, I don't meet everything, all my goals or everything that I promised. And I'm okay with that. Whereas before I would push through all the time and I wasn't fully aware of all my triggers. And to see those text messages compared to how I am now, I was like, oh yeah, that's a huge difference I made in my life in just a couple of years. So yeah, the more you can make space for your feelings and understand your triggers and give up your resistance, I think the easier life will flow for you.
Giving up that resistance and being okay with maybe not hitting the goal or changing the goal because we're always evolving.
Yeah.
It's just part of our human evolution.
Absolutely. But yeah, you need to be kind to yourself to be able to give up on your goal or to change it. And that's hard sometimes for people.
I think it can be very difficult sometimes because you're stepping out of that comfort zone too. And let's face it, we've created these comfort zones and that old familiar pattern, but it can be so much easier and enjoyable, as I have found out by finally stopping chasing, willpower, head down mode and all of that stuff. And it does all come back to truly just being a little more present and being willing to just be honest with yourself too. And saying, okay, is this, and maybe doing like a little bit of self-evaluation also. So Amanda, I thank you so much for being here and being willing to share so vulnerably. Like, as you said, a few years ago, you might not have done that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Just being willing to share what you've gone through, your story, and also how now you've taken all of that and you serve other people through your life coaching practice. So I truly appreciate you being here. We will link your information down below so people want to get in touch with you, they can. And also, I know that you have a podcast, The Expat Life.
This Expat Life.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll link that as well down below too, so that people can reach out to you if they want to. So thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Kim. I loved it. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. If you like what you hear, please consider leaving a rating and hit that subscribe button. And if you know someone who would benefit from this episode, please share it with them. I'll be back again next week with another episode of Shift or Get Off the Pot.